With a total landmass of 4,500 square miles, Qatar is a very small independent nation. Just to give you a small idea about how small Qatar is, it is about 21 times smaller than the United Kingdom. 284 Qatars can fit inside India. It is approximately 0.12% the size of the United States. Qatar is fully covered by deserts and is situated in the center of the Middle East. When Qatar got its independence from the United Kingdom in 1971, it was a sparsely populated, hostile and a very poor country. As a matter of fact, it was one of the most undesirable colonies of the UK because of the inhospitable desert lands where the temperature in summers would climb up to over 50 degrees Celsius. And, until less than a century ago, it was one of the poorest countries in the entire region. But it didn't last forever, and today Qatar is one of the richest countries in the world with a per capita income of more than $127,000, which is almost 3 times the income in France and more than 10 times of that in Russia. Back then, the primary sources of income for this tiny country used to be its dwindling fishing industry, and extraction of pearls out of the ocean. The days were not very good, but now, it looks like the gold mine of the world. Today, Qatar has investments in properties all around the world. It is the birthplace of the most important Arabic media company, Al Jazeera, and its capital city of Doha. When you visit Doha, you'll be amazed by the unforced fusion of modernity and traditionalism.
Like this, make it pop like this, make it not like this, make it drop.
A mix of Monaco and Vegas, but without the alcohol and gambling. There's no room for simplicity. Everything is sumptuous, huge and sky-high in Doha. But the question is, how did Qatar transform itself into such a rich nation it is today? Everybody thinks that oil made Qatar what it is today, but it's only partially correct. Let's dig into the facts. In 1938, Qatar's first oil field was discovered, and things began to change, but only to a minimal extent. The reason behind this was, the oil reserves were not humongous enough to change the prospects of the country. Then, in 1970 something really big happened. Oil giant Shell found the world's third largest gas field, the Northern Fields in Qatar. But at that time natural gas was not really that profitable. There still was a problem, and that was, back then, gas could only be transported through pipelines. And Qatar was very far from the places where natural gas can be used, and to lay pipelines to those places would have been an unviable and very costly. This wasn't something that the British back then was open to spending on one of its tiniest colonies. But things were about to change. When Qatar gained independence in 1971, the new emir had already realized that the future of his county and the only way he could have changed the fortunes for Qatar was by gas. And later in the year 1996, the new emir, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, heavily invested monetary resources into research and development of this underdeveloped technology called liquefaction. Liquefaction of gases is physical conversion of a gas into a liquid state which can be easily transported in containers loaded over ships and trucks just like oil. That investment made back in those times in the later years paid back in enormous volumes. Within a short span of time, Qatar began to export natural gas to nations spanning all across the world and is now the world's largest exporter of LNG, earning back a humongous amount of money. And that was how Qatar transformed its fate, from a poor desert nation hooked into a failing fishing industry and pearl extraction to a super-rich country with booming infrastructural development and radically improving lifestyle, which was also depicted within the marvelous GDP growth rates. But hang on, this is just a part of their growth. A lot of countries trade oil and gas and earn loads of cash out of it. But what they are doing with that money decides their fate. Venezuela, as an example, spent money in outlandish mannerism and is now a struggling economy and collapsed state on the verge of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Qatar took a different path. In 1995, after Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani reached power, things have changed significantly. Qatar invested petrodollars both nationally and internationally, because what Qatar spent would be gone. But What Qatar would invest would generate extra streams of income even when oil or gas won't. Smart, isn't it? So, Qatar formed a sovereign wealth fund to strategically invest its fortunes across the world in diversified sectors. The body was called Qatar Investment Authority. QIA is known as the power source of Qatar because it did such a wonderful job at choosing the right sectors to invest into, that today its net worth is over 330 billion. That's a huge figure, making it the 11th biggest sovereign wealth fund in the world. And that's the wealth of a country with a population of just over 2.5 million, among whom just about 300,000 people are Qatari. Yep, just 5 zeros after 3. And that is what has risen its overall GDP per capita to over 127,000. Just for comparison, the USA has registered a GDP per capita of a little less than 60,000 in 2016. Well, you do the math. Qatar Investment Authority has hugely invested in the best of properties in the biggest cities in the world. I mean, just imagine this. Qatar owns more properties in London than the Queen of England does. It owns 34% of the top 15 skyscrapers in London, while the UK-based companies own a little less than 21%. Not just that, in the United States, Qatar was, in 2016, the fourth largest office investor. Qatar owns 10% of the Empire State Building. Similarly, it has a 20% stake in the British Airways, owns 20% of the Heathrow Airport and 25% of the St. Petersburg Airport as well. That's just, wow. And their investment does not just end in real estates. Qatar is a major stakeholder in many multinationals. Qatar is one of the largest stakeholder in companies like Volkswagen, Uber, Barclays, Shell, Russian oil giant, Rosneft and many more. Apart from these, Qatar is strongly working in the direction to establish itself in the world of sports. Qatar will be hosting the 2022 FIFA World Cup, and it will be the first Middle Eastern country to do so. And not to forget that Qatar owns major football club, PSG. And the money that these investments are generating is then invested back into acquiring other valuable assets around the world. And also channeled back to Qatar to build more highways, ports, airports, colleges and research centers, and more infrastructural marvels like skyscrapers and much more. But what's the ultimate goal? Why are they doing all this? Well, that is to in future not rely on the business of oil and gas and develop major sources of income other than oil and gas. But what is the difference between Qatar and many other oil-producing countries? The difference is how they spend money. Many countries just spend the money coming from exploiting natural resources in luxuries, while Qatar invests that money keeping the future in mind. So, even when the demand for oil will decrease, the other streams of income will keep Qatar thriving and will generate a huge amount of money. But it's not just about oil, gas and money. As we know, Qatar was controlled by Saudi Arabia for years, and Qatar just could not overlook Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. The new emir knew that in order to survive they needed to gain their identity and get international influence. In 2003, when Saudi Arabia requested the US to withdraw its troops from their country, Qatar didn't hesitate to grab this opportunity and offered itself as the new base for the US troops. It even spent $1 billion in building large military bases. The Al Udeid Air Base is a military base located west of Doha and is owned by the Qatar Emiri Air Force. It is home to the headquarters of United States Central Command and United States Air Force Central Command, where more than 11,000 U.S. troops reside. Indeed, we can say that Qatar has taken out a comprehensive insurance policy. Al Jazeera is constantly working to get global influence with a high success rate. Though Qatar has some dark secrets such as poor labor conditions, situation of women, and lack of transparency. There are still a lot of areas the nation has to work on. Qatar has to prove that it can work without a government and can become flag bearer of the Middle East. Smart investments and being one of the most open countries in the region will definitely help Qatar in attracting public internationally, but there's still a long way to go for Qatar to even surpass Dubai.